Hi everyone, welcome back. In my previous video, I provided a brief overview and context of UAVs. Today, I am here to go over some of the problems that we will be facing, or that we could potentially be facing, with the widespread adoption of UAVs. At a high level, we could categorize these problems into three major areas. 1, privacy, 2, safety, and 3, scalability. First problem is privacy. Now, one of the problems people tend to have with UAVs making an appearance in our society is this notion that privacy may be compromised. Take this example of paparazzi drones, the objective being to follow and photograph celebrities. Criminals and other individuals may use this technology for purposes of stalking, harassment, and other forms of malicious intent. The issue with privacy is it has a lot to do with the way people view and perceive this kind of technology. Keep in mind that technology is just an enabler. There needs to be proper regulatory, legal, and other controls in place in order to make sure people are aware of their privacy invasion. People are given choices to opt in and opt out of certain provisions. At a minimum, they're at least made aware of who has access to them, their information, and for what purpose. As you can see, the area of privacy is huge. I will provide a more detailed solution approach in my next set of videos on how this can best be addressed. The second issue deals with safety. Safety is definitely one of the most important aspects when it comes to UAVs because it's one of those things that quite honestly has to be there in order for people and the community to be safe and accepting of UAVs in our society. And specifically regarding safety is this whole idea of preventing accidents and collisions. Because what happens is if you have 2 or more UAVs collide in the air, then it's not just the damage that's done to the UAVs that could be potentially dangerous, but it's also the civilian lives that are endangered or could be at stake from the debris of the collision. But before getting into the nuances and specifics of collisions, I think it's really important to understand what exactly a collision is. Ultimately, a collision is when 2 or more objects, in this case UAVs, are at the same position at the same point of time. In order to prevent something like that from happening, however, there needs to be some form of communication that takes place between the UAVs. If you draw an analogy to driving, for example, a lot of times at stop signs, a driver motions to another driver to go ahead simply by a hand wave or a gesture. Even while changing lanes, a driver generally signals his or her intention to switch lanes in order to prevent a collision. In both these examples, there is some form of communication that is taking place. A signal followed by an acknowledgement of that signal. This same sort of idea must be implemented and used by UAVs. And I think an example would best help illustrate this point. Suppose you have a UAV going east to west and another UAV going north to south. Is there a possibility of collision? Yes. But by enabling some sort or form of communication between the UAVs, we can allow the UAVs to adjust their speeds, speed up or slow down accordingly, change their altitudes, change their directions accordingly in order to prevent the likelihood of a collision. So really the crux of the solution here is communication, communication, and more communication. Fortunately for us, the upside to communication is that that problem is already solved by cell phone companies. So the next step would be to expand and implement this kind of technology with UAVs. So that's the scenario when 2 or more UAVs collide with each other. But then there's also the situation that we have to take into account when a UAV collides with, let's say, a bird. In that case, the communication has to be different, because it's no longer 2 ways. Obviously, the bird cannot communicate with the UAV. I will leave the problem of communicating with birds to other experts. However, I will focus more on the scientific approach of preventing collisions through the use of sophisticated yet reliable camera and sensor systems. The final issue here deals with scalability. Now, scalability is this idea that whatever you have multiplied by a factor of 10, or whatever you have is multiplied by a factor of 100. I think you get the idea, but it's basically this concept that whatever you have should be multiplied by some factor x. Now, the tricky thing to keep in mind is that you have to be able to accommodate the scaling factor without compromising on anything else like safety and efficiency. So I think scalability is a really big idea because if we plan to leverage this kind of technology, we have to be practical, which means ensuring a level of scalability and flexibility for the UAVs in terms of the number of UAVs that will be deployed in our airspace and roaming our airspace. Logically, we can't have a handful of UAVs performing all the tasks. Just ask yourself this: would you rather have a handful of UAVs doing all the heavy lifting, flying all over the world, just for the sake of a condensed airspace or a less complex UTM? Just something to keep in mind. So that's just the rundown of some of the issues that we will be facing with UAVs in the future. In my next video, I will be detailing some of the aspects of UTM, specifically the areas of automatic issue identification and automatic task distribution. Thank you.